like personally with me, like I know I kind of confused like Saturday and Sunday, and just everything's starting to blend together. And can I make a confession to you?
What's that?
I feel like I am the only one that thinks I'm going crazy, and I don't know what to do.
We are so back.
Let's go! And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth, from Ukraine to Uganda. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I'm the only. I am Ryan James Kearns.
I am the one, the only Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who wonder what we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's pretty simple. Every week, me and Ryan look at each other and say, hey, listen to this. And what that entails is we'll pick out an album, a music album, that we have selected, either one of us. We'll go through it track by track, pick out our favorite tracks, pick out, if necessary, our least favorite tracks. Go through what we like, what we don't like. And then at the end of the episode, we give a rating based out of 10 and also recommendations for future albums based on this one. So, Ryan, last time we did a full album review, because it's been a little bit, what did we do?
We discovered what it means to be brand new men from the country duo Brooks and Dunn. And, walking away from the review, it was a good time. It's another album I can put underneath my country belt because, before we started our project here, I was basically like, I know Toby Keith and I know some Alan Jackson, and I think Kenny Chesney thinks his tractor is sexy, but overall though, I'm glad to experience Brand New Man by Brooks and Dunn. It was a good time for me.
I'm glad you had a good time with that album, despite, that one track. But if you're wondering what that one track is, go check that episode out. But yeah, no, I've listened to a decent bit of country, and that one was one of the bigger ones of the 90s. I think we've covered a few country albums so far now on our show with Brooks and Dunn, Winona. I think we may as well throw Lucinda Williams into that category, even though that was a bit more alt country. Now for this week, we are not doing country again, but we are staying down in the South. Ryan, I believe it is your turn this week. What are we doing?
So we are going to be reviewing a band that both you and I have seen live. I actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's our first live concert that we saw together.
Aside from multiple MGNs, yes.
Professionally put on concerts that were like a national touring act.
Yes.
I digress. So, yeah, the group that we're going to be covering this week, it's Manchester Orchestra. And specifically, the album that we're covering is going to be from their 2009 release, Means Everything to Nothing. And for those of you who are like, what is a Manchester Orchestra? I feel like that's a valid question compared to the other times that you and I have talked about very huge pop acts or more well-known acts in our show, with when we bring up a Sabrina Carpenter or Beyonce. I digress. So Manchester Orchestra, they are an indie rock band from Atlanta, Georgia. They're critically acclaimed for their frontman Andy Hall's impassioned and unique vocals and lyrics. They formed in 2004. They've released 7 studio albums as of this recording. And the way that they got their name was a combination of Andy saying that he chose Manchester He's talking about this in an interview with Caught in the Crossfire. Andy explained the name Manchester Orchestra by saying that he chose Manchester because he had gone through a summer of listening to nothing but the Smiths. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Smiths are from Manchester in the UK. And he chose the word orchestra because he didn't want to be part of a band and envisioned having all of his friends come and be part of it and form an orchestra. So, so that's how we got the name Manchester Orchestra as a whole. Like, a combination of Andy listening to the Smiths and the fact that he didn't want to be part of a band, he wanted to be part of a orchestra. And that might seem a little pretentious, but I don't know. I feel like Andy Hall and Manchester Orchestra as a collective are far from pretentious. They just are what they are. And so, drilling down a little bit further into Andy Hall as a person, he was born November 7th, 1986, a Scorpio. And I promised I was going to do this in a previous review going forward. So, Scorpios are known for their intense passion, their magnetic presence, and unyielding determination. So, I feel like that as a songwriter and as a performer and as a lyricist, that does describe Andy Hall as a complete package there. And the way that he came into writing music is that he was feeling increasingly alienated in his small town Georgia Christian high school. That high school was named Providence Christian Academy in the suburbs of Atlanta. And yeah, so Hall became so frustrated in his senior year studying at home, he started, writing music. And he actually wrote his first full-length album in 2004 while in high school. Like, he was 17 or 19 years old whenever he wrote Manchester Orchestra's first album, which, that's a crazy fact that I just discovered. But anyways, so, and then, the sound of Manchester Orchestra as a collective, they're often associated with the new wave of, post-emo punk artists. So, kind of, right up my alley and right around the corner. They are compared to acts such as Brand New, Kevin Devine, Me Without You, and The Deer Hunter. But I wouldn't say that their music kind of conforms to, that sound or that genre. They kind of just do their own thing. They might have different influences here or there, but yeah, they're not really... They don't pigeonhole themselves into, one sound. And this album here specifically, like I said, it's their 2009 sophomore release. Nothing much more else to say about the build up to the album. Before I give my background on the band, Matt, I feel like I know the answer to this question. Can you tell the listeners what is your background with Manchester Orchestra?
Yeah, my background with Manchester Orchestra does stem from that fateful evening in, I believe it was 2014. In the third concert I saw that summer after Tony Bennett and Lynyrd Skynyrd, yes, that is true, don't at me, that you had invited me out to Mr. Small's Theater in Millvale, suburb of Pittsburgh, to watch Manchester Orchestra, because I believe you won tickets for this?
Yes, I did, from a platform that I can't remember the name of, but they tracked to see if you were doing specific actions, viewing videos, viewing photos, and I just set up a system where I, won pretty handedly.
That's fair. I mean, hey, if you can game the system, game away. But at the same time, I believe that show was also put on by a local radio station, 105.90X. And I also remember that there were 3 bands at night, and if I'm going to be completely honest, my favorite band walking away from that night wasn't Manchester Orchestra. It was an opening act for them, which were the Mowglis, a band out of California, which had sort of this Fleetwood Mac type of vibe that just sort of leaned a bit more towards my pop leanings. However, since then, well, I should also mention that night I did end up buying a Manchester Orchestra CD, which is their 2014 album Cope. And so kind of put them on the show for a little bit, dug a little bit more of the Mowgli's. But then last year, I got back into walking, got back into listening to albums while I walk, and I picked out Cope, and I was like, oh, okay. There's something to this. There's something to this. And I even remember that night, and granted, Mr. Smalls is a more old school theater, which is to say it doesn't have a lot of padding. So I do remember Manchester Orchestra being very, very, very loud and powerful. And that's how they sound on Cope, and we'll discuss whether or not they sound that way on here.
So I'm gonna add a couple of cliff notes to the introduction and like the detailing of like who Manchester Orchestra is as a whole. I mentioned that in the year 2004, Andy Hall started writing his first full-length album, and I alluded to the fact that it was Manchester Orchestra's first album. That's incorrect. It was just his own, like, first solo album. That album's called 5 Stories, and he wrote that when he was 19 or 20, because that came out... Well, no, he wrote that when he was 18. With the album that we're talking about today, he was 23 when this came out. So, that being said, my relationship with Manchester Orchestra is a little bit more detailed than, what you, like, that certainly does play into a factor of, like, my appreciation for the band. Like, seeing them live took my appreciation and love for them up to a whole new level. My first introduction to the group was actually through the album that we're talking about today, Means Everything to Nothing. Not going to spoil anything about what I think about this album, just know that this was my launching point. And from there, I explored a couple different albums. It went forward to Simple Math, which is their next release, and then I went backwards to the 2006 release of theirs, I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child. And there was just something about the songwriting and the performances and just Andy Hall's voice as a whole that just really drew me to the band. And, like, I'm going to discuss a lot of what Manchester Orchestra brings to the table has, for one way or another, influenced my current musical taste. And yeah, even post seeing them in concert with you, my friend, I've kept up with their releases. Not really, like a lot of their later releases, they're good, and I'll go back to them, but they don't floor me in the ways that, I have a different relationship with their back catalog as compared to their earlier stuff, as hipster as that makes me sound.
Well, I mean, at the same time, I feel like you are trying to tightrope your way around explaining your thoughts on this album without actually trying to do that. So I give you full credit for that. But before we actually get into it, I do have to say this is interesting that this is your second album in a row, this and Paramore, where you have picked out a sophomore release from the aughts. So just wanted to throw that out there.
And, I mean, that wasn't intentional, but nonetheless, here we are, man.
Here we are.
So,
it is a new day.
So, I think I'm ready to kick it off with The Only One, if you are ready.
I am ready. Let's get into it.
So, this right here, with The Only One being the opening track off the album, is a fantastic way to open up the record, because you get that interesting sound effect that almost seems like you're winding up, maybe not a apt descriptor here, but it kind of reminds me of just winding up like a toy box. It's like you're winding up the record, you're winding up Andy Hall, you're winding up the band. It's a very interesting way to start out the whole thing, and like you get hit with the jangly guitars, Andy Hall singing very, very good lyrics where he's, throwing out the thesis statement of the song right away, which is, I'm the only one that thinks I'm going crazy and I don't know what to do. And I'm the only son of a pastor I know who does the things that I do. Now, the topics and the themes of, religion and Andy's love-hate relationship with it are going to be discussed at a pretty good length with this review here. But yeah, just right away you get hit with what is a good launching point for what the record and the band bring to the table. And just as the song progresses, I just love how things get more layered and layered and layered. I always like that on the songwriting front. We often talk about musical kinks with me. That might be another musical kink. And on top of that, one other thing I want to shout out with this track here is that the drum work in the opening is absolutely fantastic. I really love the play off the drums of the rim hits and the stick hits. I thought that was a nice touch. And like I mentioned, Andy's anti-religious views and lyrics are pretty great here. Outside of the opening lyrics that I told you about, another set of lyrics that I highlighted here are, I bet you did what you did when you did, just to tell every friend that you have the Lord did it. And basically poking fun at the fact, or highlighting the fact that sometimes people only do good acts for the sake of being praised for them instead of just doing good acts for their own right. I love this song. It's a fantastic way to open up the record. It's not in my top 3. And full disclosure, do I really have to say, I have a top 3 and a bottom nothing here.
I also have a top 3 and a bottom nothing, and much like you, this song does not crack that top 3. But you are right. This is a great, powerful opening statement to the record. You nailed it right on the head with that jangly wall of guitars that just forces its way right in. The singing's impassioned. The drum work is very good. The lyrics are pretty simple in nature, but I will say the bridge on this track, it is great. It is a great bridge. And we get this sort of, I guess what kept this out of the top 3 for me was the fact that it was so simplistic, especially compared to some other tracks that are going to come up very soon. And sonically, it kind of just is establishing the tone, Does it do anything that blows your mind? No. But does it do anything that is offensive or super weird? Also, no. It's a solid album opener that sets the tone right away, both from the sense of the powerful guitars and the impassioned vocals to, again, the lyrics about sort of being on the edge, allegories to, again, chastising people for openly seeking praise for their faith in the Lord when, someone like Andy Hall knows a lot about the inner struggles that a lot of people have, religious or otherwise, that, again, are going to be discussed later on. But, yeah, solid opener.
So, before we proceed here, I'm gonna throw a challenge out to you, because do you want to take a wild guess right now what my favorite song on this whole record is?
I will say the fact that you're bringing it up now, I'm going to take a wild guess and say this next track is going to be your favorite.
Okay, so when I give my feelings about, like, Shake It Out, which is the next track here, I will let you know if it is the top dog here on the album.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple options I think that are in there, but then again, I might just be projecting my own top three. Anyways, the point being, on to the next track, which is Shake It Out. And once again, we get that wall of guitars and a very almost Black Keys-esque sort of groove that just sort of is very upbeat and very just sort of interlocked with the guitars being what they are. I've heard it sort of termed before, like with the band The Who, too, where sometimes you have like they had, of course, Roger Daltrey on lead vocal and Pete Townsend on lead guitar, but they weren't really like singers and vocalists in a traditional sense. And it seemed more like their bassist and their drummer Keith Moon did all like the flashy work that like someone like Townsend would do on lead guitar. Like they were more solo oriented compared to the top guys. That's kind of how I felt with this opening. Like it felt like the drummer was doing all the fancy work while the guitars were just sort of pounding it out. And lyrically, this song is not quite as upbeat because I'm sure you could probably divvy a little bit more into like the nooks and crannies of who's involved and why they're involved. But the basic thesis I got from it, this song's about drugs. This song is 100% about drugs, and the term "shake it out" is sort of, that moment where you get that rush of junk or whatever substance you're using going through your veins, and you're just kind of like, "Whew, okay, all right, here we go, party time." So yeah, this song, again, guitar work is fantastic. The singing is probably the best it is on the entire record, because again, it's melodic when it has to be, but it's also frenzied and impassionate and raw when it has to be as well. And the final note I'll say about this track before I let you dive a little bit more into it is I wrote down my notes just based on how this track ends with just that fierce volley of guitars going back and forth. I don't know if I heard this song live, but I can feel its power. It feels like a song I want to hear live. I want this song to like shake my body whole, no pun intended. Like it is just, I could envision being at Mr. Smalls that night and just feeling the raw like punch of this song just command you. And again, I predicted that this is going to be your favorite song on the album, but I'll just come out and say it. It is my favorite song on the album.
You're a man of good taste. I will let you know that you did hear the song live. They did do this song on that fateful night whenever you and I joined together in concert matrimony. I digress. So,
you could not have put that any weirder, Mr. Ryan.
I know. I had the thought in my brain that it had to get out. So, you did an excellent job laying the groundwork of Shake It Out. It's one of the bigger songs off the record. You were right on the money whenever you were talking about Andy's vocal performance here, because in the preview track, The Only One, you get like a hint of like Andy's like range, but here, Andy really starts to shake it out. I feel like the band starts to shake it out more on a artistic sense and a just performance sense. Like everything is turned up like a couple degrees with this track. And a couple of the things that I want to touch upon that you didn't hit on is that breakdown in the middle where it just seems like the whole track just halts in momentum and it's almost like a moment of self-reflection, and then just builds it right back up to slam you in the face and throw your body up against a wall. Like, that's fantastic. I love that. And just I'm also in love with the fact that there are moments where I picked up where the vocals and the guitar, this track here, they match up in certain moments. Like, that's always a fun time for me, and I always love that. And on a lyrical sense, like, I walked away from the track thinking that this is how, this is a song about dealing with the struggles of life and how Andy is battling to keep fighting. Like, the opening lyrics are talking about God, I need another one, another one, another one, another one. I can feel it now. I felt the Lord in my Father's house. And then, like, just the whole song as a whole kind of just reminds me of just the willingness for Andy to keep fighting despite what life is throwing at him. And also this line, when he's talking about, like, are you the living ghost of what I need? Are you going to get the best of me? We will see. Like, the concept of, like, a living ghost, like, it's somebody who is physically there, but brain dead. And, like, whenever he's talking about, like, are you the living ghost of what I need? Basically almost saying, like, a false pretense of, like, oh, you think I think I need you, but I really don't need, this is not the solution for what I need in life. Like, I thought that was a clever turn of phrase. And then speaking about, like, turns of phrase here, like, I love how, like, that concept of, like, the living ghost is flipped in the second verse, wherever he's talking about, God, I've never seen a thing so complete. I'm the living ghost of what you need. I'm everything eternally. God, just speak. Like, I love when songwriters and lyricists just flip verses on their own head. Like, I'm always a fan of that. Yeah, like, I don't really have much else to say about Shake It Out. Like, you did an excellent job laying out the groundwork. Like, this is a song for me that is an excellent, like, okay, hey, we're gonna pedal to the metal here. This is a great workout song. This is a great, like, just a song to really just get you going. And, like, how this track like, is sequenced in the album is really good too, because, like, I feel like how The Only One ends and how Shake It Out begins, it's not a seamless transition, but it fits like a glove. And that might be because, like, I've only listened to this album, like, like a million times by now, so, like, I know mentally, oh, hey, Shake It Out is coming next. But yeah, you were wrong. This song is not my favorite track off the album, but it is my second favorite track. It landed in my top 3 at number 2.
Respectable. Yeah, no, this is a great track. And once again, much like The Only One, has a great bridge in the middle, like you mentioned. And yeah, like, and I agree with you. The sequencing of how The Only One sort of sets this up so that Shake It Out could sort of knock it out of the park is a great sort of setup for the band. Not just from, again, a sonic perspective, but also from a lyrical perspective. Because, again, The Only One establishes sort of this feeling of uneasiness, and then Shake It Out is basically standing on the tightrope while you're dealing with this uneasiness. Like, it's a great 1-2 punch.
Yeah. And speaking of about a 1-2 punch, let's see if the third punch lands here. So, the next track is I've Got Friends. And, like, instead of doing the whole, like, revving up feeling that you've gotten with the previous 2 tracks with The Only One and Shake It Out, I've Got Friends starts out in a more softer tone of, like, softer vocals and instrumentals. I love how it opens up, especially with the opening lyric being talked about, like, dirty on the ground is what I need. Like, it paints a good picture, but it leaves a lot to the imagination of the listener. Like, as vague as that sounds, but moving away from that, the chorus on this track here, like, I feel like the previous two tracks didn't have a solid chorus. Here, this is one of the best choruses on the whole album. It's not the best chorus, but it's one of the best. Like, it's easily one of the most rememberable. And I appreciate when the band slides down in dynamics from the chorus down to the verse. And the overall flow of the track is fantastic. And here again, we find another bridge that is fantastic as well. Maybe not as, like, I don't know, as great as Shake It Out, but it's still solid in its own right. And on a lyric front here, I mentioned in the previous track how Andy flipped like one of the verses on its head. Here you get that as well. Like, in the first verse you get "Dirty on the ground is what I need. I got another one to tell you and another one to make you believe." And the second verse is "Dirty on the ground is what I see. I need another reason. Why I need another reason. Tell me to breathe." Like, I love that. It's not really a flip, but it's almost like a callback to it. And also, I love this line. I tried to do it all for you. It didn't do anything for me. And I feel like that sums up the overall, like, kind of message of this track here, which is basically the how some relationships and some friendships are basically meaningless. Just some people tend to collect friends, but they don't establish good connections, and it's more of a transactional approach as compared to, like, just a relationship and a kingsmanship approach here. But yeah, overall though, I've Got Friends is a solid song. I would argue it's a 1-2-3 punch coming out of the gate for me, but I've Got Friends did not land in my top 3.
So I do agree with you that it is a 1-2-3 punch. Much like the start of the album, this song is very simplistic in its structure. Like with something we didn't mention with Shake It Out was how you get that long wall of guitars at the very end before a very brief sort of reprise at the end. So it's a little different than your traditional song structure. Here it's more of a traditional verse-chorus type of structure. But I agree with you that the harmonies on the chorus are fantastic. And the chorus itself is really, really good. What set this track apart for me in a good way is on the chorus, the calm response that the band has with the piano that's in the background is just, it's just so good, man. Like, just hear, like, the way, anytime, like, a band does, like, I've gotten more into, like, call and response stuff, like, sort of dealing the show, and you sort of talking about that being sort of one of your things. Well, I caught it here, and I was just like, yes, I like that. Just the way they sing, and you just hear that dun, 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 dun. Like, obviously not quite that, but you get the point. But yeah, like, some moments like that stuck out to me to the point where I do have this in my top 3 at number 3 because it is a fantastic song.
One other note, I'm glad that I've Got Friends landed in your top 3. Fun fact, it was in my top 3 until maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago, before I started talking about this track here, because I thought about a track much later on in the album and, like, how it's grown on me. But when we get to it, we'll get to it, obviously. One other note I want to throw about in I've Got Friends is in the chorus, on the last chorus, where they stutter on the word stay. Like, that is just so great. Like it's a fantastic chorus. It's a fantastic track, and for me, like, you know, Shake It Out and I've Got Friends were two of the big, like, I don't want to say bigger tracks in the album, but they were tracks that I went back to time in, time out when I first got introduced to the group. So, like, you know, I'm glad that you appreciate them as well, my friend.
Yeah, no, it is a great track. Are you ready to move on to Pride?
I'm ready to talk about some Pride, but not in the sense of like it being like Pride Month. I digress.
Yeah, no, we're saving that. We're saving that for June. So Pride is a track that features the first of several attempts on this record lyrically, where Andy Hall is deciding, you know what? I've had enough of this. I've had enough of whatever it is that I'm going through, whether it be my bad drug use or my internal struggles with dealing with things. I need to stand up for myself and break these habits. And lyrically, it's a pretty strong entry. I don't think it's quite as strong as the first three songs, though. Like, it's strong. It's good. And it's a necessary track on this album. And it is just, again, a fine, awesome piece. I did have written that the song is a powerful slog through a wall of guitars. And unlike Shake It Out, or I've Got Friends, which felt a little bit more musically upbeat, like this just feels like, almost like old school, like metal, like just sort of slowed down to a very, plodding tempo and just noise, lots and lots of noise. Not that any of that's a bad thing, because, hey, there are moments where you just need to have really loud noise turned up to explain yourself. And I feel like that's what this track is at least trying to use to match its sort of, I need to break out of this vibe that it's going for in its lyrics. So it did not crack my top three, but it does provide a strong narratival moment in the album where Andy is trying to break free of the stuff that he's been talking about on I've Got Friends, and Shake It Out, and The Only One, if we're being honest.
So, would you say this is a 1, 2, 3, 4 punch? Is this a 4-punch start?
I wouldn't call it. If we're going with the punching metaphors, I would say this is the bell ringing and taking a sip of water type of moment. Like, it's necessary, but it isn't a punch.
I would disagree. I feel like this song is a punch.
Oh, okay.
So, and ironically enough, I did not appreciate Pride to the extent I do now if it wasn't for when we saw them live do this song. Like, the way that they performed this song live was chef's kiss. Like, I actually had to go back later on that night and find what that song was that they performed, because they performed it so good. And you were right on the money whenever you were talking about, like, it's just a wall of guitars, and just the single guitar lick that is basically drenched throughout the whole record, the whole track here. Like, it builds very slowly, but it gradually gets faster and faster and faster and bigger and bigger and bigger, like to the point that when you get to the end and you're hearing that guitar riff play over and over again, it's like you're staring at a mountain right in front of you, like guitar sound. Like, it's fantastic, man. And in terms of like striking a narrative, I really loved how this track opened up, where Andy's talking about like feeling the calming breeze, stepping out to watch the final scene. Like, I can almost imagine this being like a soundtrack to like a final battle, like a last battle, like almost like on the scale of like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Twilight. I know people shit on Twilight, but I digress. But it just, yeah, like the band as a whole, Manchester Orchestra, I could tell that they are students in executing dynamics. They know how to get loud. They know how to get soft. They know how to build up songs. And this is a masterclass in that right here. I love it so much. And just another thing that I noticed is that the way that the song changes up during the bridge is slow, but it keeps up until prior to the bridge, like you get like more of a sludgy kind of thing that you described, and then at the bridge things start to pick up in tempo, and this starts a blitz to the end, and just the way that how the track progresses with how the vocals are sound so vicious and raw. I love it, man. It speaks to me in every single sense of the word, and just in terms of like it seems like in this review here, I'm finding examples of lyrics that are flipped or played on later on. But in the first verse, he's talking about, after all, it's you, my pride, and me. Basically, this, like, you kind of alluded to this, but like this is Andy talking about dealing with like addiction. So like him, my pride, and like the thing that's causing the addiction, like for lack of a better term, like the devil. And then in the second verse, you get, after all, it's me, the king, aka the pride, and the beast, which is his addiction. Like I love that, man. That's so good. And then like I just love how the elevated sense of the lyrics are like played out there to a T. And also at the end where things start to get more raw and more rapid, the way that the lyrics at the end, it almost seems like a round, are great. Like you get the lyrics sound, I'm a dead neck, what a habit, so I'll dig it up and bury it in the in ground, what a broke head, I think I'm dying, I need another one to incubate the sound. Like it's not completing a thought, but the completion of the thought is in the next bar. Like I love that, man. It's so good. Now, why isn't this song in my top 3? Well, dear listener and dear Matt, when we get to the other 2 tracks, I'll let you know why.
Oh, okay. So a little bit of a to be continued with this one. Okay. But no, I think, see, this is one of those albums, like I've talked about before, particularly with, ironically enough, the Smiths and The Queen is Dead when we did that review, how my top 3 when I recorded that episode with you is much different from what it is right now. I have a feeling like this album could very much be that time and time again, because there are songs that just will get shuffled around and I'm thinking, okay, no, this is my favorite track. No, this is my favorite track. And it may just depend on how I'm feeling at that moment. But this track, like you said, has a lot of great musical elements. And it does, like I said, provide a strong counter to the tightrope that we've been walking these last couple songs, where he's like, no, I need to get off of this. I need to stand on firm ground and stand up for myself. So yeah, I think this is a strong song, but I can understand why it's not your top 3 and it's not mine either.
So I am really enjoying the record so far. Like I've claimed, like we've hit a 1, 2, 3, 4 punch. Do you think we're gonna hit a 5 punch within my teeth with me?
I'm gonna say we're going 5 punches on this.
Okay. So it's not a 5 punch, man. No. It's not. And I think right away, unfortunately for me, like I don't want to be that basic of a bitch here, but like the way that the track opens up in a lyrical sense, where Andy's talking about, I felt a black man in my teeth. What a way! Jesus is coming. He acts my age, and he always looks the same. I'm like, what does the black man have to do with this? Like, I know we've discussed in a lot of instances in our show here that sometimes lyrics don't mean jack shit. But for me, and how I understand Andy Hall's lyricism, like, I read today that sometimes he just tries to, like, put words together that might seem okay, like they might flow together, but I don't know. Like, I feel like with this record here, everything was purposeful. Like, it doesn't have to like have a super deep meaning, but it doesn't have to be Fall Out Boy lyricism, if you know what I mean. So,
Right.
yeah. Overall, though, in my teeth, it's a great chorus. Overall, my feelings about the track as a whole, it's a great. It's just it's a bit of a step down, though. If I had to be completely honest with myself, and like there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can't always go at 11, and sometimes if you go at 11, like for the whole album, like, well, gonna stop going down that rabbit hole because that's not talking about in my teeth here. So rewinding to my discussion about the chorus, like, outside of the lyrics, like, I love the little, like, little guitar noises that I heard in there. Like, it is a great detail, great dressing to the whole track. And the second verse has an excellent flow, and I love how the vocals are playing with it, like rhythm, and just doing like not straightforward approaches, but like just having fun with it. The bridge is pretty great, where it almost stops all momentum of the track, and then it just smacks you right back in the face with it. In terms of on the lyrical front, though, this is another track about Andy battling with life and religion. Like, I mentioned like the black man in my teeth, what a way, like how that line turned me off. But like I do like this line though, and this is basically this is found in the chorus where he's talking about that the bottom is gonna bury us anyway, so I'm doing what I gotta to stay awake. Basically just saying like, hey, like at the end of the day, like I'm just doing what I can to like keep going, to keep being alive, and he's having this fear about like how the bottom's gonna bury us anyway, like how the ground's just gonna give out from underneath us. Like, that's an excellent touch, but just overall though, the song really didn't do a whole lot to like really pique my interest. Like the talks about Jesus coming around each day for 500 days was a nice touch. But it's a great track, but it's not an amazing track, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, and I share a lot of the same thoughts that you do. My very first thought about this track was, what are these lyrics? And so I, as I do with several tracks, looked it up on Genius.com, and they didn't seem to know what it was either. Because that is a very strange way to open up this track. And I don't know if we'll ever get a full explanation as to why he said that, aside from the one that you came up with, which honestly tracks. But after that, that chorus is fantastic. The bridge, once again, is phenomenal. And I find it kind of hilarious that you don't consider this a part of your opening punches, because the way this song ends with the sort of, once again, wall of guitars outro that it presents was the first time on this record that I was like, oh, this is a very Ryan coded album. Because much like a couple of the other tracks, particularly Shake It Out, these tracks do one of your like top musical kinks, which is breathing. it breathes for like at least a minute before signing off, and I know that's like so far up your alley. I'm thinking, he's enjoying every last second of this. And I enjoyed it too. I enjoyed the outro to this track. I'm probably a little higher on it than you are because, again, despite that opening lyric, um, I I feel like this is one of those tracks that on repeated listens could end up in my top three. Did not land there this time.
I love how we're picking up on each other's like musical kinks, and like you can listen to like this track here, especially at the end, and like, oh, this is where Ryan's just he is feasting on this track.
So, quick side note before we move on to $100. In regards to that, one song I've recently gone back to listening to on my regular car rotation is Zombie by the Cranberries. And once again, I realize why you wanted to do that album at one point because, hey, that song does that same thing.
All right, so are you ready to talk about like just $100?
Yeah, talking about $100, which is the shortest track on the album, and it seems almost like I wouldn't call it an interlude. I would call more of a. Again, I know this is 2009, and records and vinyl were definitely not quite back yet, or at least not all the way back. But this feels like it is a closer to side A, which serves the purpose of not just showing that the band can play soft, because they could very well play soft, but also the fact that they can reestablish. Ah, there it is. That they can reestablish how the narrative that Andy Hall's been fighting these last couple of songs can in fact come back, because while this song is short, it is quite messed up because it feels like Andy is just sort of at the state of, wondering if everything's going to be okay and trying to make things right. And the way this song sort of goes through its punchline of, I'm fine, I'll be fine, I just need $100 for you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Pretty much admitting, hey, I'm in the hole, and I don't know if there's a way out of it. Except to pay everybody back a lot of money. Which, yeah, that indicates that there's still issues and that he is not out of the woods yet as he hoped to be on Pride. So I do think this is, once again, much like Pride, a strong narrative pivot in the album. And I do like the fact that, again, it's the first half of it starts on the softer tone with more or less just vocals and a little bit of ambiance in the background before it ramps up for that last little part. Obviously not in my top three, but it's an important track.
So, first of all, can confirm, because I do own this record on vinyl, that this is the end of side A. So, yeah. So, apparently, the meaning and the story behind the song, in a live session with Spin Magazine, Hall said that this song is about the first time he blew up in front of his new wife, Amy, after he lost a $100 bill that his father had just given him. So, yeah, not too much of a deeper meaning. It was just like a life experience for him. And like overall though, like the song, it's another one of those songs for me that is an important song off the record. Is it in my top three? No, but like I do love how the band does play with. Well, Andy plays with dynamics here because I feel like it's just him here because it's just him and guitar. Like it's a great song. And just like how the track changes up and how you get the chorus where he's talking, and that's why I'm fine, I am fine. Like it really hits you. It kind of hits you in the face. Like, it's not a super loud moment, like compared to like songs like Pride and other tracks that we're going to be discussing here coming up shortly. But like, it's a good change up. Yeah, I mean, not much else to say about $100. I mean, it's a good closer to side A, and it's a good track overall. Actually,
Right. And
I digress. It's a fantastic track, but yeah, it's basically an end of side A for me.
yeah, it's like you're watching a play, and this is sort of the last thing that they do before the curtains drop and everybody goes to the bathroom for intermission. And speaking of intermission, Ryan,
Yes, Matthew.
I have a question for you.
And what would be that question?
If the listeners of this particular episode of our podcast entitled Hey, Listen to This are enjoying what they are hearing and they want to support us or look up some other stuff that we've done, what are the ways they can go about doing that?
So, the number one way that they can help support what you and I do on a week in, week out basis and just help keep supporting what we're doing is that on that whatever app or listening device that they are listening to us on right now, make sure that they do whatever action that they need to do to make sure that they stay up to date with our episodes, whether that's a subscribe, a follow. And also, in addition to that, if that app that you're listening to us on right now allows you to leave a positive review, that goes a long way as well. And if you're listening to this on the YouTubes, like every other YouTuber out there does say, make sure that you like the video, drop a comment in the video doobly-doo and thing down below. Basically telling us what you thought about this review and what you think about our platform as a whole. And then in addition to just supporting the show and just following, like keeping up to date with our episodes and making sure that you're doing the appropriate action so that we get picked up by the algorithmic gods, follow us on the socials. We have Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. The tagline for that is TT Hey Listen. But yeah, just make sure that you like and follow us on those platforms as well, just to stay up to date with our episodes on a different platform. And also, if you have a specific, request in terms of like a album or an artist that you guys want us to cover, one, you can drop it in the video if you're listening to this on YouTube, drop it in the comments down below. And also, feel free to shoot us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. But yeah, ultimately, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank the listeners out there for, taking the time to listen to two dudes talk about music, because, that's an incredibly, original concept. But
Yeah, it's especially the two dudes part. But no, we do thank we do thank all our listeners for listening to us, whether it be family, friends, strangers, or some combination of the three. So moving on in the album, Mean Everything to Nothing by Manchester Orchestra, we kick off side B, and we know when we kick off side B because Ryan, you have this album on vinyl. Hint to all listeners who know what's coming. So the first track on side B is I Can Feel a Hot One, and it is your turn.
So, I Can Feel a Hot One, prior to doing this review, was the last important big song on the record for me. And holy shit, dude. Like, this song is oftentimes in our platform here and our discussions about music, I talk about how I love how an artist will do the bare vocals and bare instrumentation approach and bare their soul on a record. I feel like I Can Feel a Hot One was my awakening with that being a kink for me and how I love that. Because, like, dude, this song is absolute poetry. It's an absolute masterclass in human expression. And I just love it so much. Now, the reasons why I love it, though, because, I mean, I can gush about it for, like, another, like, 30 minutes if you let me to. But, yeah, just, like, the way that it opens up with that simple guitar line and Andy telling the story about having a panic attack with lyrics like, I could feel a hot one taking me down for a moment, I could feel the force, veining to the point of tears. You were holding on to me, you were holding on to make a point, what's the point? And, like, he's talking about having a panic attack here. And just the overall, like, disintegration of Andy's mental state here. Like, we go from him having, like, a full-blown panic attack to him crying himself to sleep at night to him having a dream that his wife died in a drunk driving accident, and only for that dream to result in the Lord showing that his unborn daughter was still alive, and she was born out of that, and how at that very moment Andy pauses when he says, I could feel love. Again, like, oh my goodness, chef's kiss, no notes, slap me in the face with a fish, grandma. Like, that is an absolute pinnacle moment on this whole album for me. And the thing is, like, we've talked about, like, big songs like Pride and The Only One, and plenty enough moments, like even in Shake It Out, where it's like they are loud and in your face. Like, this is not loud and in your face whatsoever. Like, it is basically just Andy expressing his soul onto a track, and it is absolutely great. Outside of the lyrics and the specific moments that I just highlighted there, is like I love the different splashes of different instruments that you get throughout the whole track, and also you get the reference to shaking it out in the front seat in one moment there. So I love how that's a callback to Shake It Out that we've discussed earlier on in the album, and I just love how the song as a whole shifts flow, but it doesn't lose the focus. It stays in the pocket. It is so fucking tight. And just, oh, man. Just, it's so good, man. Do I have to say it? Do I have to,
No.
like, state the obvious here?
No, you don't. You don't. But for the sake of clarity, you might as well just say it.
This is easily my favorite song on the whole album. It's my favorite Manchester Orchestra song, and I would be willing to put it up with one of the greatest songs of all time in my experience in my lifetime.
Wow, that's some heavy stuff. And you'll be glad to know I'm not going to break your heart. I have this at number 2 in my top 3 because, first of all, the way you talked about it not being in your face, I think, is a perfect move. Because, again, all throughout side A of this record, you just get guitars left and right, layered on top of layered on top of layered, just a wall of sound in the grungiest possible way. And here they decide to dial that back because they have to. They have to in order to talk about a subject matter this dark. Like you said, it starts with a panic attack, and Andy saying, what's the point? He's frustrated, he's exhausted, and he ends up crying himself to sleep. Now, I find it interesting that you say, because I did not realize this looking at the lyrics initially, that this was a dream sequence. I thought this was a real thing that happened. And I thought what it was, instead of a drunk driving accident, was, I heard the line, the curtains around your neck. I thought that was in reference to the wife taking her own life. and that actually happening, and somehow the baby being born from that. But whatever the case is, the way it's written out and the way it's sung out by Andy on the song is great. It is great. Especially like that, you said, that last moment of "I Can Feel Love Again" before it does go into this sonic like epilogue, which again allows the end of the track to breathe. Again, one of your kind of things. And just again, it's very tight and it's very emotionally charged without being full blast. It is a great album track. More so than an album track. It's a great song. Personally, I do think that Shake It Out is just a tiny hair better. And honestly, I think part of that, and I apologize for coming off a little bit overtly optimistic, but this song is so dark and so very, like, it reminded me a little bit of the penultimate track off of the Brave Faces Everyone album, the one that I said I didn't really like. I liked it, but not in a very enjoyable way. That's this, but much better, because here, because of it, the subject matter being relatively consistent and narratival throughout the whole record, it makes a track like this seem much more deep in context. And again, the performance is also just great. So yeah, number 2 track on the album for me. And one final addendum is that, as far as a favorite Manchester Orchestra song, probably Choose You is still my top favorite, but further on down the line, either this or Shake It Out could probably challenge that mark.
So I'm glad that you did include "I Can Feel a Hot One" in your top tracks here, even at number 2. Like, that does mean a lot to me, and I can get what you're talking about with how this track here, with it being as dark and dense as it is, like, it's something that you couldn't go back to on a day-to-day listen, like comparing it to the penultimate, like the Spanish Love Songs track that you mentioned. There's a Kendrick Lamar track that I would consider like that would be on par with, like, just being as dark and as grim, and that would be You. Maybe one day we'll talk about that track, but like, it's essentially like, it's a very dark song. So yeah, like, yeah, just overall though, like, I wouldn't put "I Can Feel a Hot One." This is my own personal experience. I wouldn't put "I Can Feel a Hot One" in terms of tracks that are dark to the point that I can't put them on a day in, day out basis and not enjoy it on the same level as, like, Shake It Out. Obviously, because, like, that's how I put my top 2 out of 3. I haven't talked about my third favorite track yet, but yeah, just it's my own personal taste. I'm glad that you enjoyed "I Can Feel a Hot One," and this is one of the tracks that I'm glad I was able to expose you to in terms of, like, our show here, because this track means a lot to me.
And I can understand why. It is a very powerful track, and just, again, from start to finish, just a song that can exist on its own in such a grand like if you just took the song away from the album, it still tells a story. It still tells a grand, very deep text that can pretty much carry itself on its own. But within the context of the album, it even comes across stronger, considering the, like I said, tightrope that we were walking earlier, and the attempts to try to relieve oneself of that tension, of that inner demon that Andy is facing throughout the whole record.
So, you ready to talk about my friend Marcus?
Yes, My Friend Marcus. Now, this song is a complete shift away from "I Can Feel a Hot One," because this song is pretty much more or less a straightforward song in structure. And it's pretty simplistic lyrically, too. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not deep, because this song deals with another heavy subject, this time dealing with Andy's friend Marcus, who was more or less, based on what we hear in this song, probably molested by his pastor in the ever so grand tradition of church abuse scandals. And without getting too deep into that subject, because we could go on about that for who knows how long, the way this song is structured, while it's simple, it's also very interesting, because the first verse is from Andy's perspective. The second verse seems like it's from the pastor's perspective, or at the very least, Andy trying to quote the pastor perspective. And then the third verse goes back to Andy's perspective. So I thought that was a little interesting. The chorus is solid. The sound here is solid. And I will say that this track, it's a great track in of its own right. Obviously didn't land in my top 3 because we're done with that now. But it does sort of suffer from having to come off the presence of I Can Feel a Hot One being right before it. Because for this song to sort of get back into the wham bam thank you ma'am style of sonic pulsation that they want, it sounds good. I mean, the band sounds great, Andy sounds great, but it feels like it just feels like way too much of a good track, a just good track, to come off of I Can Feel a Hot One. Like, it feels like there could have been like a transitionary track in the middle there to sort of help that along. But all that to say, this is a solid track. It's a good track. And it's worth a listen.
So, funny thing about my friend Marcus, I didn't realize that in the verses, like, it's alluding to the fact that his friend Marcus got, molested. And then I looked at the lyrics, I'm like, oh, I'm a dummy. Like, it literally says, and his father touched more than spirit. So, I digress. So, I feel like with that in mind, like the way that I walked away from the track, man, is especially in the chorus where Andy's singing, now I can see you mean everything to nothing. Roll credits. The like the concept of like meaning everything to nothing, like for me, this seemed like another spiritual deconstruction that Andy was expressing here in terms of like me like talk about like God and how like a God and like the concept of Christianity can mean everything to a believer or nothing to a non-believer. Like and like I feel like I can make a maybe a through line with the story about Marcus and how like he was touched inappropriately by his father, and how like maybe Andy saw this as a sign that God doesn't exist and like God doesn't do anything, and I do like the second verse whenever Andy's singing about I think you should go home, son, find a father and your meaning, and father could mean like literally like or like earthly father or heavenly father, and finding meaning. Like for me, this does come across as like a spiritual deconstruction. The song about like talking about like his friend Marcus and how like we've alluded to a couple times already, and basically Andy dealing with the fact of like just struggling with life and just trying to find meaning. And I feel like with that as a whole, and it seems to be like I don't know, like almost like a through line throughout the whole record, that it's almost it is probably by design that you get the title of the whole album first sung here with the lyrics you mean everything to nothing. And overall, like that chorus, it's a great chorus. And it always kind of reminded me of like a bar song where, like, if, like, there's Irish people out at a bar. It doesn't have to be Irish, but, like, just people that are enjoying themselves when this song would go on the radio. Like, I could see, like, people being like singing like, you mean everything to nothing. I love that feel. I love the three film. And just overall, though, like, outside of those moments, like, the calm down from the chorus to the verse on a songwriting aspect is great. I love that. And just, I do love, again, the moments here where the vocals and instrumentals, like, fall in the hits where, like, if they just accent certain phrases. I do love that. The roar of the guitars in the chorus is fantastic. Yeah, I'm a lot higher on this track than you. I don't know if you're able to tell or not, but it's not in my top three.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah. So,
oh wow,
and I can't wait to get to my third favorite track. But my friend Marcus, I respect my friend Marcus, but he didn't do enough to crack my top three.
Understandable. Again, there's a lot of good in this track, but it doesn't feel like, again, compared to the heights that this band has already perpetuated on this record, that this track quite got there. But it's still, like, just really good in and of itself.
So, ready to transition over to Tony the Tiger?
Yes, Tony the Tiger, a allusion to the longtime mascot for Frosted Flakes, and I'm bringing that up now because it does not come up in the song. Why they named it Tony the Tiger, pretty sure I'll let you figure that one out, because I know there's probably some connection there, but to me this almost feels like a sequel, or maybe a prequel in that term, to I Can Feel a Hot One, because this is basically a song about Andy in a reflective state, wondering, how things can be the way they are, and suggesting that someone could do something so crazy as to, as I saw it, I Can Feel a Hot One, taking their own life to the point of, or taking that last hit, if you will, as we talked about in earlier songs. And it all culminates in that last line of, I didn't think you would do it. I didn't think you would do it. So it's on the softer side sonically. It's not as heavy as Shake It Out or Pride, for example. But it is, again, sort of, and it feels like I've been using this term a lot through this review. It feels more like an important song than anything else, like to explain, parts of Andy's state of mind as he's trying to wrestle with these demons, particularly the demons that have been, cast, or the trauma, rather, that has been cast from I Can Feel a Hot One, because if you were to have a vision like that, I mean, you'd have to take some time to reflect about it, just wondering what on earth just happened. So I think this track does a good job of doing that. And yeah, it's a solid. I will say, I don't hate this track by any means, but this is probably the album trackiest of the tracks on this album, in my personal opinion. Like, it's good, but it's also just there compared to the others.
I agree with you. And I'm just going to start the discussion about, like, my thoughts and feelings about Tony the Tiger, in that earlier on, when I was in my final, listen of the record, I came to this track, and I kid you not, I had to restart it 3 to 4 times just to be like, okay, wait, I feel like I missed something. I feel like I missed something. I feel like I missed something. I really didn't miss much, to be honest with you. Like, for me, like, I'm more drawn to, like, granted, yeah, there's those, like, nice moments, like on the compositional front, where you get the nice groove with the band and the verses, and like how that gets elevated in the second verse, and you also get the light touches of keys. Like that's also a nice thing for me. And then you get the at the final chorus. You get singers at the ends of Andy's lines. Like that's a really good thing for me. I feel like what is kind of saving this track from I don't want to say like being a bottom track, but landing any lower in terms of like individual rankings, is the lyrical like composition of it. Like for me, this track is about somebody who Andy had a relationship with. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic one, but it could be like a friendship one, where that person is very depressed and they try to, you know, commit sewer slide, if you know what I mean. But I don't mean to make light about that, but like you get the chorus, like didn't think that you would actually do it that you talked about, and like this whole track is basically about a car ride home that if I can place the narrative correctly, like, because you get the lyric that I really do love, where Andy's singing, and we were a bridge on top of gaudy water with something left inside of you. Like, Andy probably came across this other person on top of a bridge that was about to jump, and like the friend like decided, well, realized that life was worth living. That they had something still inside of them, and like this was basically a car ride home. Like you get that imagery of a car ride in the bridge where Andy's singing and you slip the entire drive home. It was you, my sister, and I. And like I just feel like that's just a story about like just Andy discovering a friend who was about to commit suicide and they drove that person home. Like that's a nice sentiment, and especially the line about like having something left inside of them. That's a great moment. But otherwise, like on the instrumental front and the song aspect front, like it's fine. It's definitely a miss in terms of like how we talked about punches earlier on in the record. Like this is definitely not a punch, but it's fine. I feel like I've said that like at least 5 times in my thoughts about this track here.
Which is fair because, you know, you've listened to it 4 or 5 times, so you may as well say it 4 or 5 times. But yeah, no, it's again, it's more of an important track than it is a standout track. It fits into the album, but on its own, it probably doesn't hold up as well. But it's not bad.
All right, so before we move over to the last leg of the record here, with Everything to Nothing, The River, and Jimmy He Whispers, don't tell me what you think my third favorite track is, because I haven't revealed it yet, man, and we have 3 tracks left. Just mentally lock it in, and then when I reveal what my third favorite track is, you can tell me if you were right or you were wrong. I don't know why I'm fixated on this, but like, I will say that I'm just interested to see what your opinion is.
Okay, I it's down between 2. I'm gonna lock it in and keep it in the back of my mind until further notice. Moving on to Everything to Nothing. I really liked how this track started with it has a very sparse drum intro, almost like a track almost like Neil Diamond Suleiman or something a little bit more modern, where you just sort of get that very sparse beat. Maybe something off of Peter Gabriel's album that we discussed earlier sort of has that very like sparse, or even In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins for those who need a more, oh, I know that type of reference. And lyrically, it feels like we get the first of 2 summations as far as Andy's thoughts about going through everything. Because lyrically, I will say the lyrics didn't quite stand out to me on this track, because it feels more or less just, again, understanding of, dealing with religious demons, dealing with addictions, and much like Pride trying to break through that. I will say, though, musically, this track did stand out to me. Not enough to put in my top three, but the harmonies on the chorus, dude, like, for this band being a rock band, their harmonies have always been really good, and I feel like on this track, it just excels to a level that makes this track so enjoyable. Again, atop the wall guitars that you get and the good drum work that I talked about. I also like the guitar at the beginning. I probably should have mentioned that. It has sort of like a chunky sort of rhythm to it, sort of ramping things up. But once it gets into the typical Manchester Orchestra oeuvre, those harmonies rise above that and make this track really good. And the way this track ends is very fascinating because you have this outro that feels like it was lifted from the soundtrack of the merry-go-round at your local amusement park. For us, it's Kennywood. If you're listening elsewhere, fill in the blank as you need see fit. But yeah, that was really fascinating. I'm not sure what the purpose of that was. Maybe it's just sort of tongue-in-cheek thought of, hey, we're just going around in circles and nothing's changing, which would be nice and somewhat obvious, but still very nice. And yeah, I dug this track quite a bit. I wouldn't put it in my top three, but I'd probably put it in the top half of the album.
Yeah, like you talked about the carousel effects at the end. Like I was I really did love that. I wish I was able to find a reason for that, and maybe the reason is for what you alluded to. Maybe everything is just very circular, like everything just comes back to where it began. And like I feel like overall though, like I'm maybe a bit higher on this track than you, and maybe just because of the overall package of a song. Like you're talking about like the beginning, and I do love that, and how the bottom drops out and you just get that rushing guitar riff, and how it basically lays a good foundation. But that only lasts for a little bit because then you get Andy coming in with his lyrics there. And the lyrics as a whole are more about, again, another spiritual deconstruction with him, and just struggling with Andy struggling with his faith. But I feel like things are moving more towards the positive as compared to like Andy just being like upset with life and religion as a whole, because in the chorus you get the lyrics, you mean everything to nobody but me. And for me, dissecting that right now, that's like, for me, like I take that lyric as maybe God communicating to Andy, being like, hey, you mean like everything to nobody, but you mean everything to me. Like I do like that. And just outside of that, like the lyrics about Andy finding the note that belonged to his grandfather, I do like that moment there, because in the note he's talking about come down with me to a place we'll get clean and we'll meet him eventually. That's alluding to the next track, The River. And also, for me, come down with me to a place and we'll get clean and we'll meet him. This is a clear allegory or metaphor for Christianity and just meeting with God and getting clean and just renewing your life. I do like that. And just outside of the lyrics and the carousel effect that I mentioned, I do love a couple of the moments where the track just pounces at you with the instrumental hits. Like at the end of the first verse, the track almost seems to be like it just seems like you can feel the tension building up where just the guitars go back into that rapid guitar lick. I do love that. I love the anticipation sense that I get, and also just at a certain moment, there was an amazing section where the track drops down and the bottom falls out, and you get hit with the instrumental hits, and it's almost like self actualization at its finest. I love the track. It's a really good track. However, it's not my third favorite track on the record.
Okay, so my prediction was wrong. I thought this was going to be it.
So yeah, catch me on a different day. This track can easily pop into my top three. And for full disclosure, like prior to this review, like I discussed, like my top three were I Can Feel a Hot One, Shake It Out, and You've Got Friends. But like there was one track that just grew on me, and I'm just gonna keep it at that.
Okay, all right. But no, I do appreciate your lyrical analysis, and I do like the fact that it does provide a lot of clues into the next track, which is The River, A Place to Get Clean. And it also does add a bit more of a layer to the outro because, maybe the sound of the merry-go-round is a signifying of, hey, this place where we can get clean is a place back towards, somewhere we were when we were a child. Sort of the down-home return of, old comforts, in a sense. So, a little bit of a theory to poke in there as well. But I'm ready to move on to The River.
Yeah, so this is the penultimate track on the record, and
Hey.
originally The River was actually the final track on the record, and then what we're gonna be considering to be the final track, Jimmy He Whispers, was a bonus track off the record. But The River, it starts out really interesting. Like I'm really digging the dynamic shifts throughout the whole track, and the song just starts out pretty like like a soft, pretty flowy kind of track, for lack of a better descriptor there. And I do like at the end of the first verse where the listener just falls into the instrumental. Like it's a very awesome moment where you can like it just for me. I feel like I'm just being placed into the instrumental. Like that's a great thing for me. The chorus is it talk about a man hitting you in the face with a fish. Like oh my goodness. Like this chorus, it hits you really good. And like it's not really it's not really that complex. Like, you have Andy singing lyrics about, oh God, I need it, so let me sing again. Take me to the river, let me see again. And funny fact that, talk about like, Andy singing. For him, he views that as a way to communicate with God. So whenever he's talking about let me sing again, that he wants to really express himself to God in there. And I do love that. And just the like outside of that, the inclusion of the piano in the instrumental break is great. It's pretty good. I do like that. And just another thing that kind of left me maybe a little bit confused, and this might have been Andy showing his human side here, where Andy's singing about leaving you the first chance he gets, and for this to almost seem to be a confessional moment about like really just wanting to be with God and let him see God again, but then like on the flip side of that, Andy being like, I'm gonna leave you the first chance I get. It's very much the essence of being human, for lack of a better descriptor there. But outside of that, like the way that the track makes you wait for the end of the phrase, like when Andy's talking about like, and I'm gonna leave the first chance. I get like the way that he just lets that phrase breathe, like oh, another musical kink for me right there. Like I was feasting there as a Ryan Kearns music listener, but yeah, just the explosion at the end of the track is great, and yeah, outside of that, like it's a fantastic penultimate track, and it's a great part B to Everything to Nothing, but it's not my third favorite track on the record.
Really? The hidden one is getting the nod.
It's getting the flowers, and when we get to Jimmy He Whispers, I'll let you know why.
All right. Wow. The way you were gassing this one up, you had me fooled there, good sir. You had me fooled. But before we get into why the hidden track of all things is your third favorite, my thoughts on the river, which is that it to me this feels like a great knowing what's coming with the hidden track. It almost feels like a closing note similar to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Like, it's the last track, but it's not actually the last track. And it does sum up the main part of the story, as it were, very well, because it's that final cry for Andy and those around him to become clean again. Once again, you get all the good stuff. You get the wall of guitars, you get the great harmonies, all the good stuff that you've come to expect throughout the entirety of the record. It didn't quite stand out to me a lot. And again, I feel like, honestly, the second half of this record does suffer from a tiny hair of repetitiveness. Not in a way that's like, oh, I don't want to listen to that, but in a way that does kind of seem like, okay, you know what's coming next. And aside from the super standout moments, like the merry-go-round on Everything to Nothing, like the entirety of I Can Feel a Hot One, it doesn't really differentiate sound-wise, but it's still a great, great sound. And especially in the impassioned vocals that you get from Andy, hoping that they can finally break free of everything that he's been talking about, become clean again, whether it's through the Lord or through, just mentally putting themselves in the position to do that. It is a great quote-unquote ending to the main narrative of this record.
And I feel like the one thing I can really say about the river, and well, I mean, maybe I would include Everything to Nothing here, like the part B that I alluded to. It's if I were to show people like two tracks, and I were to like if I were to have to explain to people like what Manchester Orchestra is as a whole, those would be the two tracks that I would show back to back, because it shows them at their most rockiest, the most impassioned, and their most their songwriting as like what almost would be a boilerplate for the rest of the album, a good portion of their discography. Maybe not so much of their back half of their catalog, but at least this front half, up until the point that probably from before Cope to their first album. But I digress. It's a great track, man. It's a good standard Manchester Orchestra track.
Yes, and a sound like that, does rise above most others in that regard. So heading on to the final track, which is Jimmy He Whispers, the hidden track. Remember hidden tracks?
Yeah, man. I'm glad that in the streaming world, at least in my experience here, they didn't make me like, skip ahead to, like, 13 minutes ahead and be like, oh, ow, yeah. Yeah. Fun fact: my first experience with hidden tracks was experiencing the end of My Chemical Romance's "The Black Parade" with the famous last words, and then I just let the CD play, and then I come across Blood. Uh, if you not, dear listener, if you not listened to Blood, it's a fantastic track, man. It's a great hidden track there.
Yeah. My first experience with hidden tracks is a bit more on the basic side. It's Nameless, Faceless at the end of Nevermind. That one caught me off guard by a wide margin because of how it sounds, but understandably, well put in place. But yeah, Jimmy He Whispers is a hidden track, technically speaking. And once again, we get into a soft acoustic conversation of a song with the titular Jimmy, and where Andy is basically talking about what feels like another vision based on what we heard in I Can Feel a Hot One. And what stood out to me about this track, aside from, again, it being relatively quiet and sparse compared to the rest of the album, is just the way that he's talking about if the river is the last call to become clean, Jimmy He Whispers feels like the attempt in real time. Because Andy is talking about like a line where he's talking about, God describing the unspeakable to them. And that feels like one of those weird moments that you hear a lot about in religious moments where, God speaks to you and you can understand it spiritually, even though you can't put it in a context that makes much sense. That feels like what Andy's going through here. And I do appreciate that sort of being a half epilogue, half cliffhanger type of vibe to the end of this album, because it feels like a moment like this, a lot of times people want that religious experience to come back, as we alluded to on the other side, and say, hey, I talked with God and this is what happened. But this being the last track, we don't get the other side. We just get what feels like the experience. And I do appreciate that note. But it didn't quite stand out to me to get into my top three. And again, like I said earlier, this is one of those albums where I could listen back to it and completely reshuffle everything. Where I'd be like, oh, this track's actually really good. Oh, this track, not so much. But for the time being, Jimmy He Whispers is a strong, like I said, half epilogue, half cliffhanger to this album.
Dear Matthew, let me tell you about my journey with Jimmy He Whispers and how it grew from just being a okay, conclusion moment on the whole record to being almost a transformative experience for me and how I view this song, and like how it basically grew on me like a fungus and how it grew on me like moss. So in terms of like a first listen through, the lyrics, if you could pull that rope just a little higher, we will dangle alone like a firefly. And just to talk about rope pulling a little higher and dangling, like I thought, holy shit, is this song about committing sewer slide? Like, oh my goodness. And like just the way that the overall sonic package of it is, in that things just grow more intense without growing in like volume and like dynamics. Like you can just really feel just this song being like a song at night. And like you even talk about like having visions, and like you get lyrics like, when the bodies pile up sky high, and I'll sail that ship towards the sky, but I'll end all alone on the other side. Like it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to compare it directly to this, but for me, it's almost just like how it's very much like a Revelations kind of vision where things just seem so mystical and like it's just so dark. Like I just love it so much. Like I can go on for probably another 30 minutes about like how much I love this track here and how much it basically grew me. Like you get like for lack of a better term, like what would be I don't want to say a chorus, but like a grounding moment where Andy's singing, "So Jimmy, I've heard the voice of God, and he whispered, 'Fear is logical.'" And it's funny that throughout the whole record, you get Andy talking about like wanting to be cleansed with God, battling his faith with God, God meaning everything to nothing to him. Um, and this almost seems like a dark turn on like religion and like God himself or herself if you want to feel spicy, but like yeah, dude, like I don't want to read the whole lyrics as a complete package, but like this song did a number on me. Like through multiple listens, I thought about changing my top three last night, but then whenever I listened to this album on my last run through prior to this review, I thought about it once again, and then we were doing the discussion right before we did I've Got Friends. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I have to share why Jimmy He Whispers ended up being my third favorite track on the whole album.
And I appreciate perspective. And again, I feel like a track like this lends itself to, again, the juxtaposition that this album lends. Because, again, for the majority of the album, we've been getting feverish sonic walls of guitar and strong, very high, intense, impassioned vocals from Manchester Orchestra, and particularly Andy Hall. And by doing that on a repeated basis, it lets tracks like these stand out, especially when they present like it did on I Could Feel a Hot One, and on this track, the notion of a narrative that needs to be, explained more clearly without any like true sonic pulse. Like these guys know dynamics. Like Andy knows dynamics too, and it comes in very strong on this track. So again, the way they juxtapose things to make things stand out more like this does very well.
So, you want to know what else is very well that we can say at this moment right now?
We did it.
We did it, man. We found out what means everything to nothing, specifically to Manchester Orchestra.
Yeah, we did. We did. I'm going to go first because I have a sinking suspicion I know what your rating's going to be, but I'm not going to say it out loud. For me, though, I know we said the other day, or rather you said the other day to me in regards to the fact that we're recording this a little later than usual, that I apologize. And that you said apologies weren't necessary. Well, I feel it is necessary for, one, kind of dragging my feet just in a objective sense, and two, subjectively, because holy crap, why did I take so long to listen to this album? This album is really good. Again, you get a band that is just locked in musically from start to finish. The guitars sound great. The drums sound great. The bass sounds great. We didn't even talk about the bass this whole episode, so I'll give the shout out to the bass. The vocals from Andy Hall, the lyrics from Andy Hall are just so passionate and so full of life. Even when it feels like that life is in the balance. And especially on tracks like I Can Feel a Hot One, Shake It Out, I've Got Friends, even, tracks that didn't crack my top three, like Pride or Everything to Nothing. There are moments where you're just like, what is this band doing and why are they so good at it? Again, the second half does feature some tracks that are kind of on the okay-ish side of good. Like, they're still good tracks and probably tracks that could blow any other band out of the water, but they're not as good as tracks that this band already put on this album. So, all that being said, I thank you for introducing me to this album through this show, and I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
What can I say? But you're welcome. No, just kidding. Oh
boy.
man. The door was right there for me to walk on through. So I'm glad that he gave it a 9 out of 10. And for me, it was very interesting for me to go back to this record after so many listens through it prior to doing the review here today, and not even for review purposes, over the how many years that I've had a relationship with this album. And I do appreciate and I do love the lyrics and themes about spiritual deconstruction and reconstruction, and just Andy's struggles with overall life and how to cope with it. And just outside of the lyrics, the songwriting aspects are fantastic. There's several moments that I mentioned here where it just seems like the band's allowing itself to breathe, and it basically invites a listener to listen a little bit closely, and then it delivers on just giving that listener that relief. Song I Can Feel a Hot One is a transformative song for me. It has influenced my musical taste more so than I ever gave it credit for. I love how the song Jimmy He Whispers ended up being in my top 3, and it's a bonus track, man. That came out of complete left field for me. The group does do an amazing job executing great song structures that you can find in Pride, Everything to Nothing, and The River. Those are excellent examples of Manchester Orchestra's ability to be excellent song writers and composers. I will say that the band does miss a little with tracks like In My Teeth and Tony the Tiger. In terms of striking a narrative, they are important, but for me as a listener, considering the fire that they brought in other tracks, and not every track has to be a caliente kind of pepper, for lack of a better descriptor there. Tracks like The Only One and Shake It Out, those are pretty straightforward tracks, but they're great tracks in their own right. But yeah, just those tracks kind of missed the mark for me. But overall, though, this record is so good. It is easily my favorite Manchester Orchestra record. And I'm going to give this record not a 10 out of 10, but I'm going to go one step down, one slight step down to give it a 9.5 out of 10.
So between your 9.5 and my 9, that averages out to a rather rare score for us. This might be the first time we've gotten to this point, if not second or third time maybe. A 9.25 out of 10. Because
Math
works, everybody. So for my next recommended listen, I initially was going to pick Cope only because it's the only other Manchester Orchestra album I've listened to. But after a couple listens, I realized that's not the album that this reminds me of. And I will say this up front, I am not doing this to self-promote our show, because that's not my intention for this. I really do believe this is the album that is most comparative to this on a sonic, lyrical, spiritual front. And it is an album that we've reviewed. That is Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs. Because much like that album, there's a lot of deep, dark stuff that may or may not be about drugs. That definitely has a lot of loud guitars and a lot of impassioned singing. And that is the album that I was reminded of most listening to Means Everything to Nothing. So if you have not listened to Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs, check that one out.
Personal, fantastic recommendation, and it's one of my favorite albums. For me, I was originally going to go with the next LP in their catalog, that being Simple Math, but I feel like that's an evolution of their sound, and maybe, well, I would say a proper recommendation for me is if you did enjoy Means Everything to Nothing, I would say go back one record and check out the album I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child, like in by Manchester Orchestra, obviously. Like in that album, you get a lot of the same sonic themes and compositional structures. Like maybe like a one for one comparison with I Can Feel a Hot One would be Collie Strings off of that record, and then you get Wolves at Night on that record. It's a great quintessential Manchester Orchestra album. So, and if you're gonna be if you really want to get into the band, I would say start with the album that we literally just discussed. Go back one, and then just have fun from there.
So, listener, if you have not listened to I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child or Brave Faces Everyone, the former by Manchester Orchestra, the latter by Spanish Love Songs, check those albums out because we believe that if you like Mean Everything to Nothing, you will like those albums as well.
So, yeah, I feel like that wraps up the review here of Means Everything to Nothing, but yeah, we got one more thing to settle up before we kick this review into bed, my brother.
Yes, we have one last piece of business to take care of, and it is my turn to select. And my only bits of context before I give you the choice is that we're going to be going a little lighter for this next review. We're going to be going pop. And I am going to base my choices off of a song that I am thinking of. Now, I'm going to let you choose between the two options, and then I'm going to have you try to guess what song I'm thinking of. So, in regards to the song I'm thinking of, your options for our next album recommendation are verse 1 or verse 2.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do verse 1.
You're going to do verse 1. All right. Now, can you guess what song I'm thinking of in that regard?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, I will spoil it's a surprise. The song that I'm thinking of is a current pop radio hit entitled Die With a Smile, which is sung by Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga. And the singer of verse 1 of that song is Bruno Mars. So that is who we're going to be covering next, but not his recent song or album, if he has released an album. I'm not even sure if he has done that. But we're going to go back a few years. We're going to go back to the year of 2016 and talk about his album entitled 24 Karat Magic.
Let's go, man. I'm excited because I think I've checked out at least a handful of singles off of that record, but I don't think I've actually listened to that record head to toe.
Well, we are going to be doing that and talking about that next time on this show called Hey, Listen to This. But to wrap things up for this episode, again, I thank you, man, because this, again, I had previously only had bits and pieces of the Manchester Orchestra oeuvre put into my system, but this brought everything up to a whole new level, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome, man, and I'm glad that you gave the record a 9 out of 10, because if I could be honest with you, I didn't think you'd actually do it.